Good morning, grade twos. We're reading Love Does this morning, and the chapter is called Finding Rock. As I mentioned earlier, our family built a cabin up in Canada next to a Young Life camp. And I've told you before that I used to work at that Young Life camp. It's called Malibu, and I love Young Life. It's a beautiful place with tall mountains and wide inlets and rushing waterfalls of freezing cold glacier water. The problem with building a cabin there is that the land is very steep, covered in trees, and difficult to get to, which is very true. Going to camp, we took a big, very, very slow boat. It took us 3 hours. We first drew a picture of what we wanted the house to look like, but then we needed to make a big, flat spot for the house to sit on. You might be wondering how we made a flat spot out of the steep mountainside covered in loose dirt and big boulders. Guess what? We had to use dynamite to blast the dirt and rock away. I always thought dynamite would work the way it does in the movies, with an exciting trail of flames racing down a long string attached to the dynamite, and then a huge explosion. It doesn't always work that way, though. Sometimes, after the fuse is lit and everyone hides behind the rocks, the trail of flames fizzles out. When that happened to us, we all looked at each other, wondering who would check to see if the flame went out 100 feet from the dynamite or just 2 inches. Here's their picture. Eventually, someone got up the courage to tiptoe back to the fuse, relight it, and run for cover again. After the dust settled from the explosion, do you know what we found buried under all of the dirt and moss and loose stones? Solid rock. This is what we wanted to build our house on. Jesus was a carpenter, so when he talked about building houses, people listened to him. One time, Jesus told a story of 2 different men who built houses. One man built his house on loose sand, but when the wind and rain came, the house washed away because it didn't have a strong foundation under it. The other man, though, built his house on solid rock, and when the wind and rain came, the house stayed put. Jesus told stories like that to teach us bigger lessons about how God wants us to live. God wants us to build everything our lives on solid rock. Not all of the things we'll build will be houses to live in. In fact, most won't be buildings at all. We'll build our families, friendships, and communities, and a solid foundation for those will be all the things Jesus taught us about, things like love, forgiveness, and grace. Sometimes it takes a little blasting in our lives to get down to the stuff we can build on. We'll need to clear away things like selfishness and impatience. You won't need any dynamite to do this, though. You may just need a friend to help you. I'm sure you have dreams and plans about things you'd like to build too. The lesson I learned from Jesus is that the things we create are only as good as the foundations they are built on. When you make your life about the things that matter most, loving God and loving others, you'll have a solid foundation for building everything else in your life.